Welcome everyone to today's meeting of the Cabinet, both those that are participating and to those who are watching on the live stream. If members have technical difficulties during the meeting, then please contact the Democratic Services Officer on call, who will attempt to assist you. On call today is James Clapson. His number is 577200. This will also be at the top of the chat thread for members if you need it. For those of you who are watching via the Council's YouTube stream, please follow the instructions below the video if there are any issues with the live feed. I would ask participants when you are not speaking to please mute your microphone. This minimises background noise and will help everyone in listening to the proceedings. Microphones must only be on if the participant has been granted permission to speak. To gain my permission to speak, please very briefly indicate on the chat to the right side of the screen, and I will then make a note and go back to you once the person speaking has finished. Please note that we will be following the usual Cabinet protocols, in which other members of the Council usually speak only once on each item. Would everyone present please ensure that their mobile phones are turned to silent and that they are not used to make or receive phone calls whilst the meeting is in progress. Please also refrain from checking emails or conducting other business and ensure that you are in a quiet room, free from distractions for the duration of the meeting. Please also note that this meeting is being live streamed for members of the public. The meeting will also be recorded and subsequently broadcast on the internet. Please can I ask the members of the Cabinet to confirm that they are present in the meeting when I read out your name. I will ask for the attendance of those councillors who are participating in order to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1 separately. Councillor Alban.
Present.
Councillor Duckworth.
Present.
And Councillor Yates.
Present, Chair.
Do we have any members who would like to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1? I will take that as a no. Apologies have been received from Councillor Everett. As far as I'm aware, we have no more apologies for absence. Does anyone have an interest to declare in the items of business on the agenda this evening?
No.
In that case, we'll move to the minutes of the previous meeting. We are now moving to approve the summary of recommendations and decisions of the Cabinet meeting held on the 17th of December 2020, copy being attached to the agenda pack. Please may I have a proposer and a seconder?
Happy to propose.
Yeah, and I'll second. Chair.
And thank you, Councillor Alban. Unless there is any objection, I will take these as approved. And now we move on to the main business of the meeting. And I would like to introduce Councillor Yates for what I'm sure will be an exceptional breakdown of our budget monitoring report, number 3, 2020 through to 2021. Thank you very much, Councillor Yates. I pass over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This report is the third budget monitoring report for this year. The gross general fund overspend of £5.2 million is largely due to COVID and is similar to the previous monitoring report. Government financial support is estimated at £3.5 million, giving a net overspend forecast of £1.7 million. The report also highlights and seeks approval for expenditure in relation to COVID and EU transition. All this expenditure will be covered by specific government funding pots. Both the General Fund and Housing Revenue Account capital programmes are showing a substantial underspend. This, again, is largely due to COVID, as works contracts have been hampered and suppliers have been unable to deliver within normal timeframes. It is planned for most capital projects to catch up during the next financial year. I move the recommendations.
Do I have a proposer?
Chair, I'll second that. I think Councillor Yates has just proposed.
Okay,
I'm happy to propose, indeed, yeah.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Alban. And in that case, we now move on to item 5, which is our medium-term financial strategy, 2021 through to 25. And I pass again to Councillor Yates. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. This report provides analysis and commentary on the macroeconomic position, and specifically the impact of COVID-19. It sets out the prospect of radical local government finance reform, which will have an impact on our major sources of funding from government. This reform is planned during 2021 for implementation from 2022 to 2023. The financial projections in this report come with a health warning. They are based on the best guess of our finance staff of the government reforms, discussions of which have not yet begun. But they anticipate a reduction in income, largely through a rebasing of business rates, dampened to some extent from a tapering of the introduction of the changes. Apart from government funding, there are inflationary pressures of over £800,000 each year, which cannot be covered by increases in council tax and fees and charges alone. Table 3 in paragraph 7.1 sets out the overall picture. It projects a budget gap of £1.7 million in 2022 to 2023 and another £700,000 in 2023 to 2024. I would emphasise again that these figures are rough projections, and I know I speak for the Section 151 officer in giving this caveat, but it is clear that we will need to start rethinking how we deliver services over the medium term. Some potential solutions are included in Sections 9 and Sections 10. The housing revenue account is under similar inflationary pressures as the general fund. 4-year projections are included in Sections 11, and they show annual HRA deficits, although the HRA is projected to turn surplus in future years. I move the recommendations.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Yates. So Cabinet's being asked to approve the medium-term financial strategy 2021 through to 25. Unless there is any objection, I will take this as approved and ask for a seconder for the motion.
Yeah, I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. I've just been advised that in my brilliant first time chairing, I failed to approve the Section 4. So if I would like to briefly move back to that, Cabinet is being asked to approve the recommendations for item 4. Are there any objections to the approval of item 4? No. And again, I believe we had Councillor Alban as a seconder, and so I'll move on to item 6. And many apologies for that. Item 5, medium-term financial strategy. No, we've done 5. Item 6, council tax base calculation 2021 through to 22. And I introduce Councillor Yates again.
Thank you, Chair. This report presents for approval to Council the council tax base for 2021 to 2022, which has decreased by 0.88% on the previous financial year. The report proposes that from the 1st of April 2021, the Council will charge a 300% premium on properties that have been empty and substantially unfurnished for more than 10 years. This is the maximum premium that can be charged, and its introduction will help get many empty properties back into occupancy. The report also recommends to maintain the existing council tax support scheme. I move the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Yates. So to recap, Cabinet is recommended to approve the district's council tax base for 21-22 as 44,155.70, and the tax base for the towns and parishes in the council's administrative area as set out in the table at Annex 2 to the report. Confirm the introduction of a council tax premium for all properties that have been left empty and substantially unfurnished for 10 years or more. This will take effect from the 1st of April 2021 and will introduce a premium at 300% and determine not to revise the council tax reduction scheme for 2021-22. Unless I hear any objection, I will take these as approved and ask for a seconder.
Yeah, I'll second that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Alban. Item 7, Budget 2021 through to 22, and again I pass to Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Chair. This budget has been set during a truly unprecedented period for local government. Councils across the land are having to continue to support residents and businesses in exceptional ways. The government has produced substantial funding to assist with COVID test and trace, enforcement and business grants, as well as EU transition. But it has placed a tremendous strain on our workforce, which itself has been diminished by COVID. It has also placed a strain on local government finances, and Thanet is no exception. Not all COVID losses have been compensated, and there continues to be pressures on our budgets. Expenditure is higher to compensate residents and businesses and to protect people through enforcement and temporary housing. Income is lower in respect of our fees and charges, as well as council tax and business rates. The current national lockdown only adds to this pressure. It is very difficult to assess the impact of COVID and Brexit on next year's budget. There should be a reduction in COVID infection rates, nationally and locally, once the vaccines are rolled out. And the worst local effects of Brexit, the impact of Manston being used as a lorry park and latterly as a testing station, should be passing. But there will remain the national and local economic impact. Some businesses will not have survived or have built up debt. Many people will have lost their jobs. It is unlikely that Thanet will bounce back to its pre-COVID state, at least in the short term. Despite all this, we at Thanet are not as worse off as some other councils. Whilst our reserves are relatively low before COVID, we had built up a degree of resilience. We had not chosen to invest in commercial ventures, which are typically dependent on commercial rent. Our reserves had slowly grown over the previous 5 years, and our balance sheet showed that we were reducing our overall borrowing. Those authorities that were not in a similar position before COVID are facing much larger budget gaps than our £840,000. Nonetheless, the budget that I am recommending the Cabinet submits to Council does require savings. Our priorities when considering these savings were to minimise the impact on services and to minimise redundancies. I'm pleased to be able to report that there is indeed a minimal impact on services, especially frontline services. There are up to 8 posts that will be deleted, and the people occupying those posts will be going through restructuring. Although it is too early to say, some of those might be subject to compulsory redundancy, but every effort will be made to find alternative council employment for them. Another objective of the Cabinet was to adopt a transparent approach to setting the budget. We authorised 10 budget briefings for small groups of members, as well as 2 all-member briefings. There have been regular sessions with Shadow Cabinet. While I know that each member and each political group will be entitled to challenge a budget at Council and vote according to their will, I hope this transparency at least means that no one can say that they haven't had the opportunity to partake in debate. The proposed increase in council tax at £4.99 represents an increase of less than 10 pence a week for each household. On the HRA, we have acted to address the legacy of poor management by East Kent Housing. We successfully brought the service in-house, and we have a substantial investment plan in the HRA capital programme. We are acutely aware that government's housing rent policy stipulates an increase of CPI plus 1%, which represents a 1.5% rent increase for our tenants. The majority of this will be covered by benefit or universal credit, but to help ease the burden on those of our tenants not in receipt of benefit, we have elected to freeze affordable rents this year. I would draw members' attention to a small error in paragraph 13.6.1. The average rent in 2021 to 2022 is set to be £1.98 higher than the average rent in 2020 to 21, not £1.89, as stated in the report. I move that the Council approves the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yates. So to recap, Cabinet recommends to Council that the General Fund revenue budget estimates for 2021-22 are approved, assuming a £4.99 increase in the Band D equivalent for council tax, that the HRA budget estimates for 2021 through to 22 are approved, assuming a CPI plus 1 increase in social rents and a freeze in affordable rents, that the General Fund and Housing Revenue Account capital programmes for 2021 through to 25 are approved, that the flexible use of capital receipt strategy for 2021 to 22 is approved, and that the Section 151 Officer's Assurance Statement is noted. Unless I hear any objection, I will take these recommendations as approved for submission to Council. I'm seeing nothing in the chat at this point, so I would like to ask for a second.
Excuse me, Chairman, Councillor Alban, I would second that proposal, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Alban. And now we move on to item 8, which is our Treasury Management Strategy Statement, Minimum Revenue Provision Policy Statement, and Annual Investment Strategy for 2021 through to 22. And I pass over again to Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Chair. This report is required in accordance with the SIPFA Code of Practice on Treasury Management. It covers the Council's capital spending and financial plans and its Treasury strategy, backed by prudential indicators and limits for 2021 to 2022 to 2023 to 2024 inclusive. The report also presents for approval the Council's minimum revenue provision policy, capital strategy, investment strategy, and non-Treasury investments report for 2021 to 2022. This report was considered by Governance and Audit Committee on the 25th of November 2020. I move that Cabinet approves the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yates. So the recommendations are that Cabinet makes comments on this report and annexes as appropriate, recommends this report and annexes, including each of the key elements listed below, to Council for approval, including the capital plans, prudential indicators and the limits for 2021-22 to 2023-24, including the authorised limit prudential indicator, the minimum revenue provision (MRP) policy, the Treasury management strategy for 2021-22 to 2023-24 and the Treasury indicators, the investment strategy for 2021-22 contained in the Treasury, the management strategy, including the detailed criteria, the capital strategy for 2021-22, the non-Treasury investments report for 2021 and 22. Unless I hear any objection, I will take it these recommendations have been approved. There's nothing in the chat as yet, so I would like to ask for a second to this.
Yes, I'll second that, Chair. Sorry, I butted in.
Thank you very much, Councillor Albin. And I believe that concludes the business for tonight's meeting. I declare this meeting closed at 5:47, and I would like to say a huge thank you to Councillor Yates and all officers involved, and thank you to everyone who participated and to those watching from home. The live stream of this